going to pick the input data feed USA Contacts. This was created during the Input Wizard video, and it has all the information the Unify needs for this data set. Next, we'll create a new data model to associate with this Unify. A data model tells us the type of data that we're unifying. In this case, whether it's US or Canadian information, it is all contact information. On to mapping and transformations. The acronym USM stands for Unified Source Model. And we can see the wizard has templated the contacts_USM table for us at the right edge of the designer. Even though we'll be unifying contact information from Canada, which has some different names for things like state and zip code, we have existing systems which rely on the US terminology, so we'll model our USM table with the US names. This can be done by simply dragging the desired columns from the source table to the USM table. Next, we'll want to make our first transform. We want to combine the first and last names into a single column called full name. We do this by connecting the first and last names to the transform object. Next, we'll add the full name column to the USM table and connect that to the transform object. And then finally, we'll rename the transform to something meaningful like full name transform. Okay, let's edit the transform. A few things to note on the transform editor. The upper section is the code that will be run to perform the transform. The lower left are the columns we dragged into the transform, and the lower right are the helper transformation functions. We're going to pick the helper function that will allow us to concatenate three things: the first name, a separator, and the last name. We'll replace the corresponding expressions with our fields and specifically type in the space. A click of the preview button will show us what the data will look like. We can see the first name and last name are now combined and separated by a space. However, for us it would be better if it was last name, comma, first name. So let's change the expression and then preview the data to ensure it's correct. A refresh of the preview pane and we can see that the data has now been transformed the way that we want it. Next, we want to add a constant or a literal transform for the country. So we'll add a transform and give it the appropriate name. We'll add the column to the USM and call it country. And then we'll make the connection between the transform and our new country column. We'll edit the transform and simply type the literal value of USA into the expression. This will ensure that all the records get tagged as US contacts. For the purposes of this video, we're just going to schedule this Unify to run once. But if the underlying contact list was being updated continually, we would schedule this to recur and would only pull the new data. Okay, we're ready to make this happen. Clicking the execute button will start the process of unifying our USA contacts into our contacts USM table. I've gone ahead and created a query that will show us the newly populated contacts USM table. I'll only search last names that begin with the letter S so that the return dataset is somewhat small. As you can see, the data is loaded and our transformed columns for full name and country are there as expected. The next step is to unify our Canada contacts. So let's pick that from the input data feed, and then we'll choose the data model that we created earlier. Back in the designer, we can see that our contacts USM exists from our first Unify. All we have to do is map the columns from our Canada contacts to our existing USM table, noting fields like postal code will map to zip code and cell phone will map to phone 1. We have first and last name separated in this table as well, so we'll go ahead and make a full name transform like we did before. The process within the transformation editor is the same. We'll just go through it a bit faster this time around. We'll also create our country transform to tag our data, but this time we'll put in the literal string Canada. We'll make the connection between the country transform and the country column in the USM. Once again, we'll schedule this to run once. We'll execute the process to get our Canadian data into the unified table. We'll go back and refresh our contacts query, and now we can see that our Canada contacts have been unified with our USA contacts. Our literal transform for each of the data sets allows us to easily see and query which country the data came from. The Unify Wizard makes the merging of like data with different formats a breeze. No longer will it take days to go from a brand new flat file of contacts to our user-ready unified tables. We can do it in a matter of minutes.